Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's Tuesday Leadership Tip. And if you've been following along these last few weeks, we have been walking through the 4 pillars of employee engagement. So these are the things that have been found to drive employee engagement when you're thinking there, what is it going to take to get this employee on board? What does it get them to get that discretionary effort where they're working hard and they're going above and beyond the call of duty? In the first week, we talked about trust and how they want to have that trust in you. Week 2, we talked about respect and how there's got to be that mutual feeling of respect. And they notice if you don't respect them, whether they've earned it or not. And so this week, it's an interesting one. It's in control. Actually. And so when you think about that, that's not an easy one to think of right off the top of your head, like trust or respect. Well, in control is putting them in control, letting them have a say in what's going on in the organization. Because that's where you really get some exciting buy-in. And I've seen it 1,000 times where employees, boy, they can really change when they feel like they're being empowered. I want to share with you, like I've been doing these past couple weeks, some stories around this. And I go back to another situation I had with a salesperson where I came into this dealership and the managers were throwing their hands up. They were just, they had one of their most respected, longest tenured employees. Bob was his name. He had been in this dealership for 25 years. And they said, he just has not been on board lately. And in fact, when they'd have their sales meetings, he'd walk around telling the new guys, oh, don't listen to that. This is flavor of the month, and sabotaging all their efforts. So I knew Bob really well. And I had been working with this dealer for a long time. And I just said to the managers, let's bring him in here. And so we did. And Bob sat down. And again, I knew Bob for a long time. And I just cut to the chase. I said, Bob, I'm hearing you're not being much of a team player. What's up? And he was a little startled, but then he was like, okay, yeah, you want to hear? You want to know what's going on? I'll tell you what's going on. And he proceeded to say how they had all these new people that were coming and going, salespeople in and out, and they were spending so much time with them, and Bob was like the forgotten child. And he said, how I used to say goodbye every time I'd leave every night, and I haven't been doing that? And both the sales managers looked at him and looked at each other and like, yeah, now that you mentioned it. He said, well, I sit here and we sit in these meetings, and not once has anybody ever asked me for my expertise, for my knowledge, and how I could maybe help. And the managers were just shocked. They had no idea that he wanted to share all this and be a part of helping the team succeed. And then the other thing he said, the other part is you spend all this time with these newbies and you give them all this direction. Maybe I would want a tip. Maybe I'd want some suggestions. I know I've been doing it for a long time, but observe me and tell me where I could be doing better. And the managers were just blown away by this. They had no idea that he felt this way. And so they offered him a meeting coming up where he could put together whatever he wanted. Anything was on the table for him to teach and train the new people. And when I came in the next visit to talk about how that went, they said they were blown away. They said he had put together the best presentation and had taught so much of his knowledge to the salespeople that it obviously had taken him a lot of time and effort to put this together. And he was a different person after doing it. And then another story I'll share about in control, and this one's pretty wild. I had this service manager where he was frustrated because this was a corporate dealership, and they had gotten some corporate memo sent to all the service managers about how this is the way you're going to start doing this process moving forward. And he knew his technicians were going to hate this new process, and he was not even on board with it in a lot of ways either. But it was an ultimatum sent down from above, and he knew he had to follow it. So thinking about in control, thinking about how can I make this a situation where it's not just do as I say and that's the end of the story. He was writing this memo up to give to all the technicians. And he purposely, and this is crazy, he purposely made a lot of spelling and grammatical errors. And he brought in his top most respected technicians and said, we got some new directive from corporate. I got to share it with the team. This is the memo. This is what I'm going to talk about in our huddle meeting. I want your thoughts. Well, they immediately noticed that this is not a well-written script, and it had lots of errors in it, and there was no good flow to it, and they're telling them, this is wrong, and that's wrong, and that doesn't make sense. And in doing so, they actually felt part of his team in delivering this message, and they actually helped him when it came time to introduce it to the rest of the technicians, that the message part of it and the fact that it wasn't the best policy that they all were going to like, they just felt appreciated that he included them on delivering it. And so the Tuesday tip I have this week is, when you think about in control, what are maybe you holding tightly to the vest that you can relinquish, that you can offer up to your team, whether it's one-on-one, whether it's a small group, or to the entire team, and say, hey, I want your opinion. I want your thoughts. I want you to feel included on how we can grow and get better. Not just me telling you how I think we should do it, but get your input and your ideas. And you might be surprised at how much things go over, even when it's some difficult situations like that service manager. So my challenge to you over this next week is, if you think about that employee that is just off in the distance and maybe even is a thorn in your side or challenging you on what you're trying to accomplish, to flip the script and to get them in those conversations with you and say, what do you think? How do you think we should go about doing this? And then see what the results might be. You could very well be surprised. So thank you so much, and have a good week.